commissioned in 1980, Rear Admiral William A., that's Andy, Brown has used his extensive expertise in logistics and management to serve in the United States Navy in such locations as Germany, San Diego, Norfolk, Virginia, and Philadelphia, and then certainly here in the St. Louis region. His sea duty assignments included time on the USS John F. Kennedy, the USS Lethbridge, and the USS George Washington. As you know, he's presently Director of Strategy, Policy, Programs, and Logistics at the United States Transportation Command, we call it US Transcom, here at Scott Air Force Base. Over the course of a very distinguished career, Admiral Brown has received numerous awards and decorations. He's a qualified Naval Aviation Supply Corps officer and a Surface Warfare Supply Corps officer, and a 1989 recipient of the Navy League's Vice Admiral Robert F. Batchelder Award, and is also a certified acquisition professional. He has a lot to share with us this morning, and it was fun for me just to stand upstairs and listen to ideas that he's been sharing with the chair of our accounting department. So, although he's in a military uniform here today, representing the military in many different ways with us this morning, he runs a business. And so he will really help us understand some of the business aspects of what goes on in his day-to-day world. Thank you, Admiral.
Ma'am, appreciate the introduction, and Mel, thank you for the opportunity. I do have a lot to talk about. I'll try to not go into too much detail. If you want to talk sensitive issues, then probably need to do it in a sidebar, but I'll go into as much detail as I can. We have a job of national importance, and I thought I'd just give you a little feel for what's going on right now before I get into the charts that I have. And this is an email I got today from the director of DLA, Defense Logistics Agency, and it was going to the director of FEMA. It says, hey, we're focused on mission growth and posture to surge following the Northeaster. He's talking about New York and New Jersey. Currently meeting all our requirements, had our biggest day in both fuel and food. 180,000 to 1.4 million gallons of fuel, 4 to 6 million meals delivered. Food, they're delivering food, they're delivering, they've got another 5 million meals planned for delivery. Fuel, which is a big issue, 1.4 million gallons of fuel delivered. First responder fuel support, the mission profile is still growing. More first responder sites, hospitals, city buses. In New York, 12 at commercial stations, 10 hospitals in the boroughs and Long Island to support the critical hospital staff. New York City bus fueling support at Floyd, Bennett Field, and Brooklyn. 15 armories of the National Guard being supported with fuel. Again, the Meadowlands bus terminals, Verizon being supported at 7 locations with fuel. Nassau County, 50,000 gallons per day. Heating oil, 14 million gallons available for home heating, available on little or no notice. Civilian gas stations, 94 civilian gas stations have been provided fuel, 18 ongoing, several completed last night, on and on. We've got 3 ships that have been activated providing first responder locations for them to sleep at night. They've got hypothermia equipment, portable x-ray machines, dewatering, as you know. 105 of 107 pumps are on hand. Power generation, supporting with contractors, Caterpillar. Power to apartments, 2 more coming on today. Growing missions on the power. This is temporary power. He says it's still growing. 51 of 51 generator sets at Fort Dix or deployed to sites, et cetera, et cetera. Hoboken ferry support. Fuel barge arrived. Gangways and spud barge for loading the ferry stage in Elizabeth, New Jersey. That'll be in place today. Trash hauling. All these things. This is logistics, and when your supply chain breaks down, and this is what the military's coming in to help with. 5 million pounds of trash being moved every day. Contract to Titan Salvage for floating docks at the U.S. Coast Guard Station. Red Cross supporting at 11 sites, fuel, propane, meals, 600,000 meals, and on and on. So this is the current response that our military is going through today. Didn't talk about the number of flights that we have going in every day, etc. And so I'm just really proud of what Admiral Harnachek and his team at DLA are doing. And when these things happen anywhere in the world, it's part of our mission in the military to respond. And I remember the old days when the Admiral would say, "Not is my gray ship gonna go do anything but fight." It's not built to, if they want to have gray ships, if they want to have humanitarian type of events, go and hire a contractor to go do that. But those days are gone. We respond because a lot of times there's nobody else available to do it. So that's what's going on today. I'm going to take you a little bit around the world and try to explain to you what we do at U.S. Transportation Command, but I also want to kind of convey to you some general principles that I've learned in the military as a logistician. Most recently, I was at U.S. European Command for 3 years, where I was Director of Logistics there. And probably the biggest operation we did there was supporting the NATO operation in Libya. And that was quite fascinating because basically from a logistician's point of view, you were supporting from Europe an operation that was happening in Afghanistan. And I'm kind of just sticking to the logistics aspects of this, but all of these things have political, geopolitical considerations that you as a logistician have to be aware of and cognizant of, and so you really have to understand the entire picture before you go off and start trying to do things. But Libya was kind of an eye-opener for a lot of us. The Arab Spring, if you will, which has continued, and we have operations that are ongoing. Not our operations, but in Syria. So we're watching that very closely with the Turks and the Jordanians and the Israelis, and the whole world has got their eye on what's happening there right now. So that's a very touchy situation, and but you just never know what's going to kick off. We didn't know that Egypt, Libya, Algeria. We didn't know all these things would kick off per se, and then Syria. So a lot of the countries that we talk about are concerned about the same things. If you go into the Middle East, a lot of them are quasi-dictator or dictatorship type things with some level of political public influence and whatnot. But with the trends nowadays that are happening, all those governments are very concerned about what may happen to them and the potential for their governments to stand in the current environment. So let me go to the next chart. This is kind of where we are. My boss, General Fraser, reports to the Secretary of Defense. So that's not a lot of people in between the two of them, like hardly nobody. So again, it's very much at the national level. The headquarters is at Scott Air Force Base right up the road. It's I don't know if you realize it, but and I'll get into the next chart and kind of describe it, but you have the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, etc. They're kind of off to the side there. And I was explaining it earlier today, is the military departments basically generate ready forces. So the CNO, the Chief of Naval Operations, gets all of his Navy ready, and then he sails them off to go to these guys, to all these guys. And they get to employ them either in building partnership capacity or fighting, and they're part of their plans. So we do a lot of planning, but these guys are the war fighters, if you will. And then of course you've got special ops guys and strategic command, which is kind of our nuclear capability. And then you have transportation command. These guys are kind of global in nature. So these guys put the forces together and deliver them to these guys who are the war fighters. And these guys over here are the global missions, if you will. Next chart. Thanks, John. I got to thank John McKeon over here to the side. He helps me with the logistics a lot. We are the distribution umbrella for all of these guys to get forces where they're going and to support them. And we use the word distribution, not transportation, because we try to bring in the whole supply chain. And we look at, it's much more broader than just transportation. It's where do you pre-position things, how big is how much of the supply chain needs to be in different locations. So that's a discussion that's always ongoing with the services and some of the other agencies in the DoD. So we go across all these guys. This is Northern Command. Northern Command right now is, for the military, is running the operation that I just read about, the Hurricane Sandy support. So that commander, that 4-star, is running that operation. And Southcom is down here, is hopefully we're doing okay here. We didn't used to have a focus on South America or Africa. Just only about in 2008 did we establish a 4-star commander in charge of Africa, which is, it's very important that we do focus. Before this fellow up here, U.S. European Command, where I was in Stuttgart, Germany, they also had all of Africa. So that's a huge portfolio. So it was very good to split this out. CENTCOM is where the Middle East, except for we basically carved out Egypt out of Africa, and then also Israel is not part of CENTCOM, it's part of U.S. European Command. So we're very much by the map here. Everybody knows their boundaries. And this commander doesn't cross into this commander's boundary, but inevitably logistics does. And so that's what we do. And then over in the Pacific, which is just a huge area, we'll talk about that a little bit. But this is just trying to give you a feel for how the military is structured. And I think a lot of people in the U.S. don't really realize the kind of the chain of command. They think the Navy is off fighting the war, but the Navy is not. It's these guys that are fighting it. Okay, next chart. In Transcom, we have under us, we have these guys that do road and heavy ship contracting. These guys support the Navy, and they also support moving large units by sea. You have the Air Mobility Command, which you may have heard of before, that has all the tankers and all the heavy lift. And then we have this thing called the Joint Enabling Capabilities Command, which is a rapidly deployable joint task force supporter. So these guys can move pretty fast to anywhere in the world and set up an operation. And then you have our commercial and industry partners that are huge, and we leverage them quite a bit as well. So we're not just doing what we call organic support, which is the military support. We're also leveraging the commercial guys quite a bit. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So the challenge here is end-to-end deployment across the whole spectrum, and to be as efficient as we possibly can. And I might add, just so you know, in my job description is to save money. Everything that we do, we're trying to do it on a cost basis, not just, I gotta go fly the mission, I gotta do it no matter what. So when somebody puts a pallet in a big pallet in an airplane and it could carry 5 pallets and they're only carrying 1, to me, that's not very efficient. So we put rules and regulations in place to drive behavior so that it won't happen, And if a plane is flying back empty, we're not happy about a plane flying back empty. So we're always trying to economize and to take advantage of the capability we have, but save money too, because I'll talk about it a little bit more. But in the environment that we've been in Afghanistan, we've had a fairly robust budget support. But as we come out, we see the budget's going down. So I'm very much interested in innovation and how can we transform as we come out of that, because we know that the military will be coming down. We've seen it in different cycles after different wars that we've been in the past over the last 80 years or so. We know what the cycle is going to be. So out of all these commands here, we need to be driving the right behaviors in terms of consciousness. So we're working on that. Next chart. And these are kind of all the missions that we do. You can take a plane, have it deploy out of St. Louis, fly it all the way around the world. They probably refuel about 5 or 6 times maybe. And they do it all because we have these big tankers flying around. And as you think about this, think about what countries in the world that can do this stuff today. And I think you'll come to the conclusion that there aren't very many. We can do airdrop, and not just airdrop. We can drop it on a dime, which is a new capability that's been developed over the last 3 or 4 years. So when you're a SEAL up on the top of a mountain in Afghanistan and they drop it, it's going to land right where we want it to land, probably 9 times out of 10. So that's a big capability. Sustainment basically gets into, this is a ship leaving San Diego, I believe. But the sustainment basically is how do you, once the forces are in place, how do you sustain them with resupply? And so there's a lot of commercial resupply. Port operations, we have people that can do that. We have contractors that can do that. Like I was talking about with Sandy, we've hired a lot of contractors to help with that, but we also have civil engineers up there working on the port operations. During Haiti, all the port was completely destroyed. We had to bring in our own port development capabilities to get that going. We have ships that are pre-positioned around the world that have equipment and ammo on them. And, why on a ship? Why not just put it ashore? Well, a lot of times countries won't give you permission to use their shore base. And plus, you probably want to move it closer to the fight. So while it might be more expensive than having it sitting back home in a warehouse, it might be prudent and it might save money and time when you go to move it. So we do have some pre-positioned material around the world. I mentioned humanitarian assistance. We do move the president. That's a big mission. And redeployment means coming home. That's basically your retrograde and whatnot. Deployment is getting there. Look at all those trucks. We do the aero medical evacuation business. So that's controlled here in Scott. So worldwide aero medical evacuation. So think about a soldier getting injured in Afghanistan. It goes to a small hospital, gets stabilized, immediately gets put onto an airplane, is flown to Germany, restabilized, and then flown back to the United States. And to see it, because I've actually seen it, it's amazing. The people that we've saved through the speed of this system, but also the tools that they're given on the battlefield to, tourniquets built into your equipment, etc. It's just amazing the amount of training that we all receive. And so we've saved a lot of lives through this whole system that we have. And then we have, we can move people around the world, you know, basically in large or small aircraft. And then, you know, I made the point about global. We're a nation that has global influence. It's something that we have had for some time. It gives us, we have global responsibilities, and it's just something that we've decided to do. Next chart. This is just an example. This is an island out in the middle of the Pacific, Diego Garcia. You can move everything by air, and you can see it'll take longer and cost more money if you move it all by air. And if you do it from a part of it by sea lift and part of it by air, you can get it there faster and cheaper. So I just kind of wanted to show you that. Somebody was asking me, do we analyze and look at different aspects of the movement before we decide how we're going to do it? And the answer is yes. This is a very simplistic one, but you can see this is nothing. Moving this number of equipment. To get out of Afghanistan, we have to move about 1,200 vehicles per month for the next 2 years, and about 1,000 containers, 40-foot containers per month for the next 2 years to get out of Afghanistan. So that tells you how much we brought in to Afghanistan. So we brought it in over the last 10 years. And we're going to be bringing it out too. So right now, our focus is going to be at Transcom is going to be a lot of getting things out of Afghanistan efficiently. We'll get into that a little bit more. Next chart. So recently, this is kind of a 1-year look during probably the last year or two. So we've moved 2 million passengers throughout our system. Most of those go to Afghanistan and back. So there's a lot of rotations going on. 715 tons of cargo by air, and you can see that equates to about 65,000 school buses. That's a lot of stuff. 30 million tons of cargo moved by sea, and that's a good number there. 10 times less expensive than air. The worldwide logistics moves on the sea, and you'd be surprised how many ships that the U.S. that are not U.S. flagged. So it's that industry is one that we watch very closely, and there are incentives that Congress has in place that give some incentives to U.S. flagged carriers, ships, but there's not that many in the whole world. So it's cheaper to build a ship in another country, and it's cheaper to operate it with a non-U.S. flag on it. So we have to very carefully manage and support the the mariners that go to sea on the U.S. flagged ships. Because when we move stuff, we're required by law basically to use U.S. Carriers. So unless the capability is not there, we've evacuated. In Japan, we moved a lot of people out when that happened after the tsunami. My son was there. He's a pilot. He flew down to Guam with his plane. And then I mentioned the airdrops. And so St. Louis Arch weighs 86 million pounds. It's about what we've dropped in Afghanistan. So it's a lot of activity. I'm just trying to give you a feel for the volume that's going on. Next chart. This is a build chart. On the bottom here, this is the global distribution. These are kind of, you go from the point of supply, where you issue from a warehouse maybe, then you got to fly it across or take it across on a ship. And then you have in the theater, say in Afghanistan, and then you have we call it the last mile. You got to get it to if you're DHL or FedEx, you pick it up at somebody's house and then you deliver it to a location. It's end to end, and that's kind of what we do. And all along, we're using, next chart, the infrastructure that we have around the world. This is going to get worse, this chart. I'm not sure I like it. But we study these routes. We study these roads. we study these airports and these ports, and we know which ones, how big they are, we know how many aircraft we can have on the ground at one time, we know how much fuel they have there, we know what their air traffic control capability is. We know a lot about these sites, even all through Europe, etc. We're moving, there's supposed to be a swing to the Pacific, so we've been concentrated in this area for the last 10 years. So now we're starting to, relook at the future, and we think that we'll be swinging out here into the Pacific. Okay, next chart. So we have all these ships going all over the place, and you can the main thing is to see where all the nodes are. And there's also a really good chart that I don't have, but it shows the internet connections and who's talking to who on the internet. And there's like a bridge between Europe and the US. It's just this huge pipe, and almost just as much of a pipe going to just around the US. But these are and then air also. And I mentioned command communications. We have a lot of systems in the IT systems, ways to talk. Different RFID systems that we're trying to all get into, one system, if you will. So how do we talk? How do we track things? And then I'll make the point about access a little bit more later. So this is kind of our network, and it's very complex, but we study it, we understand it, and we leverage it. Next chart. John, is it moving? Next one. We do a lot with diplomatic talking to countries to maintain our capability. Now, I'm going to shift gear. So you remember the last chart. I'm going to tell you that it all just kind of happens without a plan, a coherent plan. And so what the Secretary of Defense has tasked Transcom to do is develop a global plan that brings all this together and synchronizes it. And in the next chart, John, if you get it. Okay, this one is, it's got two outputs. It's got an output here and an output here. So I mentioned the combatant commanders to you, I mentioned the services to you, and there's other agencies, and they're all doing things that are logistics and transportation, distribution related, and they're doing it in their own stovepipes. It all kind of comes together, but it's not synchronized. The job that we've been given is to look across that, and the last chart, we've got this baseline that we use, and then everybody has their plans, like how the defense of Korea, the Taiwan, these are all numbered plans that we have, and we rehearse them, and when you hear about exercises and whatnot, they all relate to numbered plans. But our job will be to say, well, what if this one happens and this one happens at the same time? What's the impact on the global distribution network? And who's doing that today? And what options does that give the commanders or the president? How do we know what the impact's going to be? So our job is going to be to look across all these kind of stovepipe plans and get them into some kind of a coherent planning cycle that looks the same. And then also on the output side for us, as we look across this, we'll be making recommendations on a yearly basis to Secretary of Defense in terms of what kind of infrastructure do we need around the world, what countries are key in terms of access, where are our vulnerabilities, etc. So this is kind of exciting, and it's something that's never been done before. So this, I think in the next year or so, this is going to be probably about 80% of what I'm working on. But so this kind of gets to the essence of why we need a synchronized plan. So today we're operating here in Afghanistan. Pakistan was our main route to get things in through this gate here at Shaman and at Torkham. And then Pakistan closed their gates based on some things that happened. So we didn't have a logistics route in there anymore. They allowed us to continue to fly over, but they didn't want us on the ground. And oh, by the way, very hostile environment. Al-Qaeda, one of their centers of effort is right there, right across the Pakistani border. General Fraser and I just got back from a trip out there. We flew over this gate, we went to this gate, and we went up here. So when it started getting tenacious, we started looking at options to by ground, go out different routes. And you can see the green are rail routes that we use. The red are truck routes. So we had a truck route that we developed that came all the way here, came across the Caspian, all the way up to Germany. And how long does that take, do you think? It's about 80 days it takes. So you're putting 40-foot containers on a truck. Actually, it was going this way. It was going in. The big thing was to get it in. Now it's to get it out. And those are all, to get it out, it's all different agreements with each country. So you got to go through Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is a big country. See how big it is? Goes all the way to the Caspian, you go across to Azerbaijan, through Georgia, and then you can go across to Turkey, or you can go across the Black Sea, and then get back on the line there. The Russians have been very supportive with their train routes. And I don't know, some of you may have studied or heard about the modern Silk Highway, or the ancient Silk Highway, which basically went into China and over to Europe. And so when we look at what the modern, because part of what we're trying to do is, to have a country that can stand on their own in Afghanistan. In order to do that, you got to have a viable economy and education system. So we're working on both of those things. But what we'd like to see is not just military equipment running across here, but commercial viability of this network. So hopefully what we're building is a commercial network that will help Afghanistan in hundreds of years from now. So and all these things have a lot of security issues. Politically, there's a lot of drug traffic that goes up through here. A lot of terrorist type routes or corruption type routes. A lot of it is not just terrorism. It's black market type things and folks that just aren't part of the government. They're part of their own mafioso type business. So some of it is us teaching them, hey, here's how we do business. We don't do bribes. If the government requires a fee, then we'll pay the fee, but we don't really stop in the road and have a guy come up to you and hand over money, So we do things by contract. So they have to learn these things. So Afghanistan had import agreements, but then now that we're starting to move things out, the new government had to develop export procedures. So we had to help them, so they had to get their Ministry of Exports, and they had to start on the fly. So they're in the middle of doing that right now. And these other countries also. And then you have the whole problem of infrastructure. What are the roads like? What are this is all roads getting up into here, going across this gate. It's called the Freedom Bridge. They go across like one at a time, and then they get on this rail system, and they go up through Moscow and whatnot. Then we go to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, some ports up there. The Russians would like us to use their port over here. So I was telling somebody the last time I had this uniform on was in Moscow 2 weeks ago when the general and I were there, and the Russians were asking us to fly material to here and then take it up here. And, of course, another thing that you would hope is that as you develop options, you have competition. And so we see prices coming down as we have options. We see the price of commercial air coming down, We see the price of commercial trucking and trains coming down. It's all because we've developed different options. And so like the Russians' options is fairly expensive, so we'll continue to look at it, but their prices are kind of high. So we'll work with them. But again, options. Now, amazing that all along this route, all these countries have also been in Afghanistan as well. And so you have to ask yourself, well, so because they're NATO countries, and some of them are not NATO, but you would think that NATO is to the point where you could do it collectively. NATO would be, we're going to move as a NATO unit, but really every country does their own. So there's a lot of, for every time that the U.S. is in here making a deal with for access through Tajikistan or something, the Brits and the Canadians and everybody else are also dealing with them. And more often than not, they kind of follow the things that we do, but these countries are really getting a lot of attention, and it's all because these routes closed over here in Pakistan. A lot of support from these countries, the Emirates over here flying things out. And then we also get support from Jordan. I don't show it on there, but Turkey, you can come down here to Mersin, get it on a ship, take it home. Same thing here. We can go through the Black Sea, take it home. Next chart. I'm kind of getting to the end here. I'll take some questions. This is a gate that we were at a couple weeks ago. This is material flowing in. You can see APL, Maersk. This was taken some time ago. Today, this is when we had a lot of stuff of our own flowing in. Today, when we were there, none of our stuff is flowing through there. So it doesn't look like this. It looks like there's these wildly painted trucks. They're jingle trucks that are bringing supplies across here, commercial supplies. This is, up here is the Khyber Pass, up here. Have you heard of the Khyber Pass? And up here at the top of the pass, it takes about 7 days for a truck to go all the way down about 10 miles down here to the gate. And right here is probably an Afghani post, but up here is the Pakistan. And again, Pakistan is a little bit more lawless than Afghanistan. It's hard to believe. So it's a dangerous route. And the truck drivers are under a lot of pressure, and it takes a long time. And when they finally get into Afghanistan, I'm told that they just kind of kiss the ground, that they're finally there. Because it's probably a 30-day route that they've been on from Karachi. Next chart. This kind of wraps it up, and again, take some questions. But if we're going to have global influence, we've got to have global logistics. And again, it's not just military, it's commercial partnerships, that we foster those relationships, because that gives us surge capability. If I have to do something really fast and take a lot of people somewhere, and I don't have the military capability to maybe engage somewhere else, I can always tap into the commercial side of the house. So it's very much you got to manage both. I made the point about options, and I always say, what's the one thing in an operation, I ask young logisticians, what's the one thing you never want to run out of? And they're always like, well, it's food or fuel or ammo. Like, no, that's all true, but you don't want to run out of options in either one of those things. And so if you got ammo flowing, where are you gonna? What's your other is that your single point of failure, etc. So teaching these young guys this stuff is important. I made the point about we're a business and we're transforming, and we really have to understand the cost of everything and challenge the cost of everything. And we see the business is going to go down, so we need to be just like any business would do. You're gonna consolidate. You're gonna cut fat. You're gonna you're going to change the way you do business and challenge everything you possibly can. So we're in the middle of doing that today. And mostly I thank you for your attention and appreciate the support for the military. And I think you'd be pleased to see what these young guys are doing in places like Afghanistan. One of the guys that I sail with out at Lake Carlisle, his son is in Kandahar. And so when I went through Kandahar, I looked him up. He came over, we had a sandwich. He's working on helicopters. And, so there's a strong connection between St. Louis and this area and the support for the military. And I'm proud to be living in the middle of the country where there's no salt water. But,